everybody. This is Stan Kordonsky. I'm a board game designer, developer, publisher, player, follower, I don't know what else, collector. Um, anyway, enjoy all things board games. And I also happen to be running Protospiel Milwaukee. So this is the second video I am making about Protospiel. So in my first video, I just kind of talked basic what Protospiel is, what it isn't, who is it for, who is it not for. If you want, you can see that video separately. This video is about more nuts and bolts of Protospiel. So as a playtesting convention, you come into Protospiel to either playtest your own designs or other people's designs, hopefully both. A really big part of that process is feedback. Feedback is something that happens usually after you finished playing the game, although it can happen sometimes in the game too. It could be kind of a free flowing thing, and it can be something that people sometimes struggle with. So I decided to just make a few tips here, just to talk about what I think could be a good practices. And I kind of split it into two parts: tips for the designers and tips for the playtesters. Now, just to remind you, as a designer, you are expected to play other people's games as much as they play your games. So you're going to be kind of sitting on both sides of that equation. But some folks come just to playtest, so you are just concerned with playtester tips. So, designer tips. Number one on the list, maybe not so surprising, is to listen. All right, you've asked someone to play your game. They've sat there, they invested whatever amount of time necessary into it. So the least you can do is hear them out. There's nothing more discouraging for playtesters and someone who starts interrupting right away, starts objecting to everything they say, starts being super defensive. Look, you putting yourself out there as a designer, it's tough. There's rejection that comes with the territory. There's criticism that comes with the territory. Grow some thick skin. This is the time to hear not just the praise, but also what sucks about your game. So be ready for that. Open your ears and listen. Some strategies for a designer, some type of the questions. So open-ended questions and specific questions. So questions would be like, well, how did you feel about your experience? Or what was something you liked about the game? What was something you didn't like about the game? So one of these open-ended questions can be used. What are the advantages and disadvantages of them? Well, open-ended questions can be used anytime. With the new versus old designs, you might not have much of specific things if it's just something you've come up with the week before, or sometimes I've seen people come to Protospiel and design a game on a spot. You might not have like very good prepared specific questions. So open-ended questions might be like the only thing you can ask, and that's fine. But even for older designs like my games, that I've been working on forever, I just want to know, hey, how was your experience? Just tell me what your feelings are. And that is the advantage, is you can explore someone's experiences. Just say, what pops into your head? It's like a Rorschach test, right? You show them an ink blot and you say, what does it look like to you? That looks like fun, or, this is a drag. So you can pick up on something that sometimes specific questions aren't very good at, and it's an overall feel. Do their, playtesters' faces light up? Do they feel like relieved that the playtest is over? You can see that too. Sometimes people will say, well, the best thing about this game is that it's over now. It's like I said, it can be tough, but you really want to know how nonverbal cues are great, of course, because you're sitting there, you can observe people being um, either happy or sad or bored or having fun or frustrated or elated. And that is a part of feedback as well, but that's a nonverbal feedback. And here we're talking more about interviewing process. So explore their feelings with open-ended questions. The disadvantage. So your mileage may differ in this. Not all playtesters, designers, people who play a game are created equal. Some people lack, like board gaming experience, and they may not really be able to properly answer a really generic question. They might not have good basis for comparison. They may not have been paying very good attention. Like some people, they can be distracted at the game. sometimes folks will be on their phones or whatever. I mean, that could be the game's fault. It could not be a game fault. You don't know what's going on in people's lives. Um, Take it as it is. Just understand if you start asking super open-ended questions and you're not getting any good feedback, then maybe like that's not going to be the best strategy. Maybe you need to dig in a little deeper. All right. Specific questions. Obviously, there are questions that you probably prepared, or maybe some problems that you've had with the game that you've been told. And so now you're asking them. And the obvious advantage is you can ask exactly about something very, very granular. You can say, how do you feel? Do you feel like the explanation is too long? Do you feel like the main mechanism is too complex or not complex enough? Do you feel that you have enough actions during your turn? Do you feel that there are enough special powers in the game? So, it's almost like yes or no questions, but feel free to expand on it a bit. So that's great to get some really specific answers to specific things. Now it doesn't answer the questions, did they have fun? Is the game good? But do keep that in mind. Disadvantage. You kind of in danger of leading the people. You're like taking their maybe they have feedback about something else, but you're leading them away from that, and you're asking them to answer other questions, and that could create an impression that your game is okay or not okay. Like you might be asking them questions and they have a lot of negative things to say, but maybe they actually like the game. Or it could be the other way. Maybe there's nothing wrong with the number of special powers you have, or the number of actions you have, or your main mechanism, but the game overall is just not that good. And you're not going to know it, so you might walk away having a wrong impression. So what's to do with all this? Well, combining methods, right? Combining methods is when you maybe start with something real more open, and if you aren't getting a very clear picture, then you are start becoming more specific. Um, does take a little bit of experience to understand why people say certain things, and that could be a topic for a whole different long video. But just as a quick example, somebody might say, I was bored. Okay, you might say, how did you feel about this game? I say, I was kind of boring. So this is where you want to go like, okay, boredom can mean different things to different people. Did you feel that your actions did matter, for example? They might say, no, no, my actions were great. So did you feel like you waited too long for your turn? Yeah, yeah. So now it's this whole different picture, right? So the people actually like playing your game, but they felt like there's so many actions that people take on their turn that by the time maybe it's a four-player game, by the time it got to them, they were sitting there for 4 or 5 minutes and they felt bored. But what they told you, I was bored, right? But by digging in a little deeper, you have more information. So try combining open and closed-ended questions or specific questions in order to get the best feedback you can get. And the last tip for designer, do take notes. Obviously, taking notes is great because you're going to hear a lot of stuff. Sometimes you're going to hear really good stuff, and you're in danger of forgetting that, so do take notes. Playtester tips. As a playtester, whether you're just there to playtest or whether you're a designer who's also playtesting, maintain awareness, right? Um, you are whatever you say is going to be subjective by definition. There's no absolute truth in the board gaming. There is no even clear definitions in the board gaming community about what certain terms mean. Oh, some people say theme should be called a setting. Some people say, some people say that uh, any mechanism is action selection because whether you're playing a card, you're selecting an action to do, whether you're placing a meeple, you're selecting an action, whatever. People argue about semantics, people argue about definitions all the time. And so just give your feedback as subjective. It helps to lead with a question with the words like I feel, or to me it seems, or in my experience. That both helps you remember that that is just your opinion, no matter how experienced you are, no matter how you know many games you played or how many games you designed. That helps you remind yourself that it's just your subjective opinion, and also reminds the designer that, hey, that's just what I think. There's no need to like lose heart, or there's no need to think your game's perfect just based on my this one person's opinion. Um, be aware of your own blind spots. Sometimes you might, for example, I don't play a lot of role playing games. So if I would play test one role playing game, I would say straight up, like, this is not my strong suit. That already lets the designer know to take it with a grain of salt, right? Versus someone who says, I play these games all the time, and I have so many experiences, and so it creates a different kind of framework for your feedback. So always be aware of your own blind spots, what you don't play a lot, what you play a ton, because that could go the other way. If you play deck builders all the time and you've played like you know 50 different deck builders, you might be kind of wore out on the genre, or you might like get really really specific because you got to this like place where you only like certain things about deck builders, and so your likes and dislikes may not be the game's fault. They just could be your own overexposure or underexposure to the genre. So just be aware of your own blind spots, okay? um, Remember, feedback is not a review of a game or a co-design of the game. So this I think that's worth saying a couple more things about that. um, this isn't a finished product. Even if the game's already on Kickstarter or something, like I said in my previous video, sometimes people are putting finishing touches in games that's already launched, but maybe not 100% done. Maybe they're looking to do some maybe late changes or improvements to the game. Whatever this stage the game is in, for example, always try to bring games that look nice-ish. I spend a little bit of time on making them kind of look nice, meaning components looks nice. Doesn't mean it's a finished product. It's just my own personal preference. Um, and so remember, you're not reviewing a finished game. So don't go in there, starting to give it like BGG ratings, or being like overly nitpicky about little things. You can acknowledge them. You can say graphic design wasn't particularly clear. Maybe you even can offer some specific advice. If a person's open to specific advice, you can say, oh, this icon for defense and this icon for attack look very similar. Maybe you should make them more distinct. So small stuff like that is fine, but don't go in there. Just you can just say, your graphic design isn't very clear, and the person can say, yeah, I haven't spent a whole lot of time on it. I know it's a problem. You can just leave it at that. There's no need to go specifically through every little thing that you see. Also, it's not a co-design. You can ask person, the designer, after you play tested the game, you can say, well, I feel like there's probably other ways you could do it. Would you like to hear what I think? And if they say yes, then go ahead. But not everyone wants you to like give them, you know, ideas for their design. Not everyone wants you to sit there and say like, "Oh, this shouldn't be a worker placement game. I feel like it should be a completely different mechanism. Let's make this a dice rolling game." Just start completely redesigning the game, completely rearranging everything. That is not what you're there for. Listen to what the designer asks you, the questions they ask you, or if they ask you free open questions, answer about that, but don't start immediately redesigning the game. You're not there to co-design the game with them, right? And then the last is it's a dialogue. When you're giving a feedback on the playtest as a playtester, it is still not just you monologuing about your experience or monologuing about faults of the game, or even good parts of the game. Although people are a lot more likely to let you monologue about how great their game is. So, but it's not right. You do have to also listen. Like take your time, say your piece, but then see give the designer ability to respond, because you might say, well, I don't know why I only have this many actions. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe the designer will say, well, I tested with more actions and people were saying the downtime was too long. Or they might say, I don't see why the dice is necessary in this combat. And designer might have an answer to that. Maybe they play tested it as a deterministic combat, and people felt it was too dull and predictable, so they put dice in it. This sometimes there's a reason that people do things. So do hear it out and then acknowledge that you heard them, and say like, okay, maybe I see why that is a good idea. Or maybe you say, well, in my opinion, I still think, for me personally, that's not the best way to do it. But that's, again, you're acknowledging that you're subjective um, in that opinion. So keep those things in mind for designer. Listen, ask open-ended questions and specific questions in combinations, hopefully. Um, and take notes. For playtester, remember to acknowledge your subjectivity, remember to acknowledge your strengths or weaknesses, um, and remember to allow designer to explain things that maybe you have questions on. All right, hopefully you guys found this helpful. If you did like this video, ask the questions in the comments. If I see questions, I can tailor the next video more towards that. But for now, let's end it here. This was Stan Kordonsky. Have a great day. Goodbye.